Hey guys, this is Bear Trap from AZ Fly Shop. Today we are going to be tying the improved semi-seal leech. This pattern is something that was taught to me by one of our game and fish biologists out here. His name's Alex LeBear. He ties his a little bit different. I put legs on mine. It's just what I like to do. So I fish this fly everywhere. I fish it in place of my semi-seal leeches. I fish it in still water. I fish it as the point fly in a Euro rig. I fish it just stripping it in. I fish it under an indicator. I do everything with it. This fly has probably caught me more fish than just about any other pattern that I fish. So let's get tying it. And for a hook on this one, we are going to be using a FIREHOLE 523, and for this one I'm using a size 14. I tie these flies in anywhere from a size 8 all the way down to a size 16, depending on where I'm fishing them and you know what fish I'm targeting with them. For a bead on this one, I'm using a FIREHOLE slotted tungsten bead in autumn. You can use brass beads, you can use any color you want. I've used them in fire orange, I use them in black a lot, purple, every color you want. I really like these autumn beads. They're not quite orange, not quite yellow, they just look really good. And for thread, we're using Vivis 8/0 in black. Color on the thread doesn't really matter all that much. The thread's going to get covered up at the end, so you won't even see it. I just like to keep it dark, that way if any of it shows, you don't notice it as bad. So you're going to get your thread started and just lay down a nice thread base all the way back to the bend of the hook, and then back up right behind the bead and snip off that tag end. So for the tail on this fly, I use just plain old black rabbit strips, Zonker cut rabbit strips. We get ours from Hareline. We have them here at the shop, and we will have a list of all the materials in the description below for you guys at the end. So what you do to tie your tail is you take one of your rabbit strips and you actually cut some of the fur off of the Zonker strip. So put some in your finger, like right in between your fingers like that, and just cut off about an inch or so, about 3/4 of an inch of rabbit fur, just so you have a nice tuft of rabbit fur to tie in for a tail. And as for length, I like to measure it against the hook shank and make it the tail just a little bit longer than the shank of the hook. And I'll trim some of this extra fuzzy stuff off just to make it cleaner when I tie it in. I spin my bobbin counterclockwise just to cord that thread up, and then start it right in behind the bead, tie it all the way back to the bend of the hook, and then all the way back up to right back behind the bead. Now, re-secure that in my vise a little bit better. Now, for the body, we're going to go right down to about the hook point. You want your thread just even with that hook point there, and make yourself a dubbing loop. The way you're going to do that is let out enough thread, about 8-9 inches of thread, and put your finger right in the middle of it. And then bring the bobbin back up to the shank of the hook and around over the top. Then you've got yourself a little loop here. And then you wrap your bobbin around that loop twice, and then wrap back and get it even with the start of the tail. So you just created a dubbing loop. And then go all the way back up. Again, leave your bobbin right behind the bead. This is it. So you go around your dubbing loop and then over the top with it, so you can control opening and closing your dubbing loop with this thing. I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but it's a Dutch company that makes fly tying tools, and it's a really cool dubbing twister. We do have them in the shop. Then you're gonna go back to your rabbit zonker, and this time cut off about 1.5 inches to 2 inches of rabbit fur, and trim it to make it as even as possible, and stick it in your dubbing loop. And I like to push mine all the way up to the top and kind of spread it out evenly throughout the dubbing loop. So when I wrap my body with it, it wraps the body pretty evenly. So it's in your dubbing loop, and then you spin it. And I'll take a piece of Velcro or a toothbrush, anything that you use as a dubbing brush. Just kind of pick it out a little bit so it's nice and fluffy and buggy looking. I'll grab the bottom with my hackle pliers just to make it easy to wrap around the body. And as I'm wrapping this dubbing loop up the body of my fly, I'm going to be pulling that hair back. That way I get a nice clean body and I'm not trapping too much of that fur. Okay, there's that. I like to use rabbit on this fly because it swims better. It moves a little better than just semi-seal in the water, and rabbit is pretty hydrophobic, so it wants to float, and in the water it just kind of tends to breathe a little bit better, and I tend to catch a little more fish with it. The other thing is it's wildly durable. It's more durable than marabou, so I use that over marabou in a lot of my flies. So another trick with this, when you first get the body on, it's going to be real fluffy and fuzzy, and it tends to get in the way a little bit. I just lick my fingers, or you can have like a little cup of water and just kind of get that fur wet, and it'll hold it all down together for you and keep it out of your way. So if you notice right here, I left a little bit of a gap between the bead and where I stopped the body. And that's gonna give me a spot to tie in not only my legs, but my collar as well. And for legs on this, you can use any color leg you want depending on what color fly you're tying. I really like these grizzly flutter legs from Hareline. They're orange and black barred. They're really awesome. They move really well, and they just have a really good color. So I will tie these in, and personally I like to tie them on the top half of the shank. And the reason I like tying them on the top half of the shank is because I tie this fly jig style, or it is on a jig style hook, which means it will ride hook point up. So the top half of the shank will become the bottom half of the fly when it's in the water. And I'll trim the legs to about the same length as the body and tail, just to keep it all even and nice looking. Now, got the legs tied in. We're gonna do another dubbing loop about half the size of the first one. So if you used about 10 inches of thread to make your first one, use about 5 to make the second one. And do the same thing. Got your dubbing loop here. And If you have a dubbing twister, you can use it. If not, I'll teach you how to do it with just a pair of hackle pliers. You can keep your finger in it just like that. And I'm gonna put the collar on with it. And for the collar, this is where the semi-seal comes in. I'm using just regular Arizona semi-seal, and you can use any color you want. For this particular one, I'm gonna use Blood Leach. I really, really like this color in a lot of situations. It's just caught me a lot of fish. But I also tie it in the black and red, Canadian olive, regular olive, peacock. I mean, you name it, I've tied these flies in that color. So for the collar on this fly, you want to stay pretty sparse with your semi-seal. The whole point of the semi-seal in this fly is just to give it a little bit of sparkle when the fly's in the water. Give it a little bit of color, a little bit of sparkle when the fly's in the water. So you're going to throw that in your dubbing loop, and then grab the bottom of the dubbing loop with your hackle pliers. Get your bobbin out of the way and just spin your hackle pliers. Doesn't quite work as well as a cool, super cool dubbing twister, but it'll get the job done if you don't have one. And then you take your nice Velcro strip, and again, pick it out, make it look buggy. I like to pick out the semi-seal on these flies. I don't do this on all my semi-seal flies, but all of my leeches I pick out the dubbing on. It just makes it look a little more buggy. And then we're gonna wrap the collar. And same thing, as you wrap this collar, pull back on those fibers to try to get them oriented facing the back. And it just came out of the hackle pliers, but that's okay. We'll make it work. I stole Rich's hackle pliers. So, make sure my legs are in the right place. And when you get to the end, just trap it with your thread. Snip off your tag end. And I'll pull a little bit tight and make sure my thread gets seated down in behind that bead. And then you're basically done. You just whip finish. And then I will, even at the very end, I will take my Velcro strip or my dubbing brush. We do have these really awesome Stomfo dubbing brushes here in the shop. They have like a little comb on one side and like a Velcro strip on the other. And then I will pick out that collar just so it's nice and buggy, gives it a nice sparkle throughout the fly. Gives it a little bit of dimension. And there it is, the improved semi-seal with legs.